My stepchildren shouted, "You'll never be a real father to us." I canceled their tuition payments and left the bills to their real father. A scandal was inevitable. I always thought betrayal would be easy to spot, that it would hit you in the face like a slap, loud, undeniable, impossible to misinterpret. But the most dangerous kind doesn't arrive like that. No, the real kind creeps in quietly, almost tenderly. It comes in soft hands, in kisses on your cheek, in whispered promises you want so badly to believe. It comes in the shape of someone you thought you loved. And by the time you realize what it really is, it's already wound itself around your life like a vine strangling a tree. I'm 39 now. I work in risk management, a job that demands foresight, calculation, and instinct to protect against what might go wrong. Ironically, I failed to apply those skills to my own personal life. I've been married to Lisa for 4 years, and with her, I've learned what partnership truly means. But this story isn't about Lisa. It's about Melissa, the woman I almost tied my life to, my ex-fiancée, the one who taught me that not every smile hides love, and not every promise deserves trust. Melissa. Even her name tastes bitter now, though once it was sweet in my mouth. When we first met, she was magnetic. She worked in marketing, and she had that same polished charisma in every setting, the ability to turn strangers into admirers with just a laugh or a well-placed word. She was stylish without trying too hard, witty without being sharp, and she carried herself like someone who always knew where she was headed. I was drawn in. More than that, I was consumed. I had been single for a while, focusing on work, convincing myself that stability and security were enough to fill the silence of my evenings. Meeting Melissa broke that silence wide open. She was exciting. She was bold. She seemed like the missing piece of a puzzle I had stopped trying to complete. We moved in together quickly. Too quickly, though I didn't see it then. When you're intoxicated by someone's presence, every warning sign looks like a challenge to overcome rather than a reason to pause. Within months, I was rearranging my life around her. Dinners, weekends, even my schedule at work. I told myself it was compromise. In truth, it was surrender. The proposal came not long after. I thought I was making the smartest, most romantic decision of my life. And yet, even in the early days, there were signals. Red flags disguised as harmless quirks, delivered in a voice so soft I almost missed their sharpness. The first shift came when she understood the scope of my financial stability. I've always been careful with money. I grew up watching my parents stretch every dollar, and when I finally built some wealth for myself, a condo fully paid off, a solid investment portfolio, savings that could withstand storms, I treated it like a shield. Melissa, however, saw it as a key. Once she knew what I had, her conversations began to tilt. Casual remarks slipped into our talks like drops of ink in water, spreading until they colored everything. Wouldn't it be nice to have a new car? Something sleek, something that fits us better than your old one? Our place is fine, but I saw this beautiful set of furniture. It would really make the space look like it belongs to a couple, not a bachelor. My friends are going to Bali this year. Imagine the stories we'd have if we joined them. It was always framed as possibility, never demand. But possibility, repeated often enough, becomes expectation. And when I hesitated, when I said maybe we should wait, maybe we should prioritize savings or think about long-term plans, her expression would falter just for a second. The smile would hold, but her eyes would dim, and her words would come with an edge. You're so careful it's almost boring. What's the point of money if you don't actually live with it? Sometimes I wonder if you're planning for the future or just avoiding the present. Small digs, tiny cuts, nothing that drew blood on its own, but wounds all the same. I told myself she was practical, that she was challenging me to loosen up, to enjoy life. I excused her remarks as the natural tension between two different approaches to money. After all, she worked in marketing, her world thrived on appearances, on lifestyles curated for effect. Maybe this was just her way of dreaming. But deep down, I felt the unease. I ignored it because I wanted her, because I had convinced myself that love meant compromise, and compromise meant absorbing a little discomfort in exchange for the bigger picture. I didn't realize that those compromises were stacking up, brick by brick, into a wall that would eventually box me in. Looking back, I see how early it all began. The way she dismissed my caution. The way she measured joy not in moments but in possessions. The way she looked at my life not as something to join but as something to upgrade. Love, real love, doesn't make you feel like you're falling behind. But with Melissa, I always felt like I was a step away from being not enough. Not enough excitement, not enough adventure, not enough generosity. And yet I stayed. I ignored the warning bells, silenced the voice in my head that whispered she wasn't what she seemed. I told myself that doubt was just fear, that fear was just the cost of commitment. But fear and doubt aren't always enemies. Sometimes they're the only friends you have left, the ones trying to save you from yourself. I didn't listen to them. Not yet. That was the beginning, the subtle corrosion, the quiet betrayal that doesn't look like betrayal at all. Not until much later when the mask finally slips. And when it did, I realized how close I had come to binding my life, my future, my very freedom to someone who saw me not as a partner, but as a resource. A man reduced to a wallet with a heartbeat. The real test of any relationship doesn't come in the bright days of laughter. It comes in the quiet corridors of contracts, in the places where trust meets paper, and signatures reveal more than kisses ever could. For me, that moment was the prenup. I've always believed in fairness. To me, a prenuptial agreement isn't a weapon. It's a safeguard, a simple recognition that love and money are not the same, and that building a life together should never mean gambling away the life you had before. I came into the relationship with stability, the condo, the savings, the investments. Melissa came in with charm and ambition, but not much else. I didn't hold that against her. I just thought it was only right that what was mine before would remain mine, and what we built together would be shared. When I first brought up the idea of a prenup, her reaction was telling. She froze for a second, her smile too stiff, her laugh too forced. But then she leaned in, kissed my cheek, and said, "Of course, I understand. It's just paperwork. I know you love me." She played it well. She played me well. She signed the draft my lawyer prepared, even joked with him about how unromantic it was. She teased me afterward, calling me Mr. Risk Management, and I laughed along, relieved. I thought it was settled. I thought she had shown her good faith. I was wrong. Weeks later, I got a call from my lawyer. His voice was sharp, clipped, like a man trying not to reveal too much until I was ready to hear it. He told me Melissa had gone behind my back and filed a revised version of the prenup. Not a misunderstanding, not a mistake, a deliberate forgery. Her version turned my condo into marital property. My savings? Joint accounts in the event of divorce. Investments? Subject to division. And the final dagger. Spousal support guaranteed, regardless of circumstance. She had tried to rewrite my life, line by line, to ensure that if the marriage collapsed, she would walk away carrying half of everything I had built. I remember sitting in my office that night, staring at the papers, feeling something colder than anger. Anger burns fast, but this was different. This was clarity, a hollow kind of clarity that makes you realize just how much of yourself you've been ignoring. The woman who claimed to love me had already plotted her exit strategy. She wasn't preparing to be my wife. She was preparing to be my widow, only I wasn't dead, just useful. I didn't confront her immediately. Confrontation gives away power, and power was the only thing I had left. Instead, I started to plan. Slowly, quietly, like building a fire without letting the smoke rise. My lawyer and I created a trap, a fake version of the contract, one that reflected her corrections. On paper, it looked like she had one. It gave her exactly what she thought she wanted. Meanwhile, the original remained intact, tucked safely away. She thought she was rewriting the rules. In reality, she was only exposing herself. At the same time, I began to move the pieces of my life into safer corners. I opened a new account she didn't know about and shifted funds there gradually. Small amounts she wouldn't notice. I updated beneficiaries and documents, tightening every loose thread she might pull. And I started logging. Not just receipts, but words. The little comments she made that revealed where her heart truly lived. Once we're married, we won't have to worry about money ever again. Imagine the house we could get once I'm on the deed too. It'll all be ours. That's what marriage is, right? No more yours and mine, just ours. Ours. She said the word with a hunger that didn't sound like love. It sounded like conquest. I wrote everything down. Dates, context, tone. Not because I needed to convince myself, by then I already knew, but because I wanted proof. Proof that I hadn't gone mad. Proof that she wasn't just careless with words but deliberate in her vision of the future. Meanwhile, Melissa carried herself as if she already owned half of everything. She walked through my condo like it was a showroom, pointing out walls she wanted to repaint, furniture she wanted to replace, renovations she wanted us to do. She spoke with certainty, as if the vows were already spoken and the contracts already binding. I let her. I smiled when she spoke of vacations, when she sent me links to jewelry she liked, when she joked about me being her retirement plan. Every word was another stone laid on the path to her own undoing. And yet, I won't pretend I wasn't conflicted. There were nights I lay awake staring at the ceiling, wondering if I was misjudging her. If maybe she was simply clumsy with money and blind to how her words sounded. But then I'd remember the papers, the forged prenup. That wasn't clumsiness. That was calculation. It's a strange thing to live alongside someone while secretly preparing to dismantle the life you've built with them. I'd wake up beside her, make coffee, go through the rituals of a couple's life, all while knowing that the foundation was already ash. She would laugh at something on her phone, kiss me on the cheek, tell me she loved me, and I would wonder how many of those words were real and how many were rehearsed. The irony wasn't lost on me. I worked in risk management, and here I was managing the greatest risk of my personal life. Not just the risk of financial loss, but the risk of losing myself. The risk of marrying someone who didn't see me as a man, but as a strategy. I learned to keep my face still, to give nothing away, to let her believe she was clever, that her plan was working. But inside I was already gone. Each day was one step closer to the exit I was quietly constructing. And that's when I realized something about betrayal. The worst part isn't the moment you discover it. It's the days that follow, when you have to live in the shadow of that knowledge, pretending not to know, smiling at the very person who sharpened the knife. Melissa thought she was winning. She thought she had rewritten the rules of the game. But the truth was, the moment she chose to betray me, the game was already over. She just didn't know it yet. There are moments in life when time seems to bend, when a few seconds stretch into an eternity because the truth, finally unmasked, refuses to be rushed. For me, that moment came on the day we were scheduled to finalize the prenup. Melissa arrived radiant. She dressed as if she were already a bride, white blouse, pearl earrings, a skirt that spoke of sophistication. She carried herself with that smug glow people wear when they think the world has been handed to them on a silver platter. She smiled at me like she had already won. The lawyer placed the papers in front of her. She barely skimmed them. Her hand trembled, not with hesitation, but with excitement. She signed her name with a flourish, leaned back, and exhaled like a conqueror planting her flag. I studied her face in that moment. The satisfaction, the greed disguised as triumph. I realized then that she hadn't even considered the possibility that I might see through her. To her, I was just another man blinded by love, another fool too eager to protect his fantasy to notice the trap being set at his feet. Then came the reveal. My lawyer slid another folder across the table. "Melissa," he said evenly, "I think you should take a look at this." She frowned, confused, and opened it. Inside was the original contract, untouched, unaltered, bearing her true signature. Line after line contradicted the forgery she had filed. Her eyes darted across the page, her confidence draining like color from a dying flame. Her voice cracked when she spoke. This isn't what I signed." The lawyer's tone was merciless. "It's exactly what you signed. We keep copies for this very reason." Melissa's mask shattered. The smugness melted into panic. Her lips parted, searching for words, but none came. She looked at me, pleading silently, But I only met her gaze with the calmness of a man who had already made his decision weeks ago. In that silence, something inside me closed forever. The love, the illusion, the hope, all of it turned to ash. This wasn't a partnership. It was a transaction, a calculation. She hadn't been planning a marriage. She had been planning a heist. I didn't need to raise my voice. My quiet was louder than any scream. The meeting ended without ceremony. She stormed out, muttering half-formed excuses, but they fell flat against the truth she had been caught in. I watched her leave, knowing she had signed more than just papers that day. She had signed the death certificate of our relationship. 2 weeks before the wedding, I canceled everything. The venue, the caterer, the flowers. All of it dismantled piece by piece, until there was nothing left of the future she had been so sure was hers. I packed my belongings, moved out of the condo we had shared, and left her with the echo of her own ambition. The fallout was as loud as it was pathetic. Melissa called relentlessly, her voice swinging between tears and fury. 1 minute she was begging, the next she was threatening. She said I had humiliated her, that I had ruined her reputation. Her mother joined the chorus, accusing me of betrayal, as if her daughter's fraud had been nothing more than a minor misunderstanding. But I was done. There is no reconciliation after a revelation like that. You can forgive mistakes, you can endure flaws, but you cannot share your life with someone who looks at you and sees a target. And just as I was severing myself from Melissa, another storm rose in my home. My stepsons. They were angry teenagers, fueled by loyalty to their biological father and poisoned by the narrative that I was nothing more than an intruder. I had tried, God knows I had tried, to build something with them. I paid for their tuition, their activities, their privileges. I showed up at games, at school meetings, at late-night talks. I thought consistency and care would carve a place for me in their lives. But that night, as the dust of my broken engagement still hung in the air, their words cut deeper than Melissa's betrayal ever had. "You'll never be our real dad," they screamed. The sentence was a knife twisted in my chest, because I hadn't been trying to replace their father. I had only been trying to give them stability, a home, a chance at something steady in a world that had already fractured once. But in their eyes, I was a wallet, a placeholder, an outsider whose effort could never buy belonging. That night, clarity came again, cold, sharp, merciless. I quietly stopped paying their tuition. I cut off the accounts, the allowances, the invisible threads that tied me to children who had rejected me outright. I left the bills to their biological father, the man they swore they answered to. The scandal was immediate. My wife at the time raged. The boys wailed. The family circled like vultures. I became the villain in their story, the cruel stepfather who turned his back. But none of them acknowledged the truth, that they had rejected me first, that they had told me in no uncertain terms that my presence was unwanted, my role dismissed. Respect and responsibility are twins. You cannot demand one without offering the other. That night I cut the cord. If I wasn't a father in their eyes, then I wasn't responsible either. Melissa's betrayal had opened my eyes to the danger of signing myself away to someone who saw me only as a resource. My stepson's rejection hammered the lesson home. Love cannot exist where respect is absent. It was the lowest point of my life. Alone, abandoned by the woman I thought I would marry, cast as an enemy in the home I had financed and nurtured. But it was also the point of transformation. Pain has a way of stripping away illusions. And what was left, when the smoke cleared, was the truth. Sometimes the only way to reclaim yourself is to burn everything that was built on lies. When you strip your life down to ashes, you learn quickly what cannot be burned. Money can vanish, homes can be sold, reputations can be dragged through mud. But one thing endures if you're willing to face it: the truth. The truth was that Melissa never loved me. She loved what I represented: stability, status, access. She loved the idea of being tied to a man whose diligence had built a fortress she could inhabit without ever lifting a brick. She loved the safety net, not the man holding it. The truth was that my stepsons never wanted me as a father figure. To them, I was a temporary presence, a man financing their lifestyle while they pledged loyalty to a father who wasn't even in the room. I had given them consistency, structure, opportunity. They had given me rejection cloaked in teenage cruelty. And the truth, hardest of all, was that I had allowed this. I had blinded myself because the fantasy of family, of belonging, of being chosen, was more intoxicating than reality. It would have been easy to grow bitter, to wall myself off, to decide that all women were Melissa in disguise, that all children were ungrateful, that every act of generosity would eventually be punished. I won't lie, for a while that's exactly who I became. A man armored not just against betrayal, but against love itself. But life, in its strange way, does not let us stay buried forever. I met Claire by accident. Not in a bar, not online, not through some orchestrated setup. I met her at a school event of all places. She was a teacher, calm and grounded in a way that made the noise around her seem irrelevant. Where Melissa had been lightning, dazzling, unpredictable, dangerous, Claire was steady flame. Warm, consistent, the kind of fire that gives light without threatening to burn the house down. Our first conversation was nothing extraordinary. We spoke about the children, the chaos of the event, the exhaustion of long workdays. But there was something in her eyes, direct, unflinching, without calculation. She looked at me, not at my suit, not at the watch on my wrist, not at the shadow of what she thought I could provide. Just me. We began seeing each other cautiously. I carried my scars like armor, waiting for the moment the mask would slip and the familiar hunger would show. But Claire never slipped. When I mentioned a prenup, expecting resistance, she surprised me. She nodded, said it was sensible, and even insisted on protecting her own assets. That was the moment I realized she was different. She wasn't playing a game. She wasn't angling for control. She wanted partnership, not ownership. With Claire, money was never leverage. If I paid for dinner, she insisted on covering the next one. If I offered to fix something in her house, she thanked me but reminded me that she was capable of handling it herself. Where Melissa had pushed for upgrades and luxuries, Claire was content with simplicity. A walk in the park, a cup of coffee, a quiet evening reading side by side. But it wasn't just about money. It was about respect. Claire listened. She valued my voice even when she disagreed. When conflict came, and it always does, she didn't weaponize silence or sharpen her words into daggers. She spoke plainly, with honesty that stung but never poisoned. I had learned to equate love with sacrifice, with swallowing pain for the sake of peace. Claire taught me that real love doesn't demand you bleed to prove your devotion. Real love stands beside you, not on top of you. The difference was stark. With Melissa, I had felt like a resource being drained, a vault slowly emptied by charm and entitlement. With Claire, I felt like a man again, not a wallet, not a placeholder, not a tool, just a man worthy of respect and affection in equal measure. Looking back, I see now that Melissa's betrayal, as devastating as it was, saved me. If I had married her, I would have lived a life where every argument ended with a ledger, where affection was conditional on my ability to provide, where failure to meet her expectations would be treated as a breach of contract rather than a human flaw. If my stepsons had not rejected me so brutally, I might have continued pouring myself into a family that never wanted me. I might have raised children who despised me, sacrificed my own children's well-being for boys who saw me as an intruder. Their cruelty forced me to stop pretending, to face the reality that respect cannot be begged or bought. It all broke me, but in that breaking I was remade. Now, with Claire, I understand what it means to build rather than to be bled. She doesn't need my protection, though I offer it. She doesn't need my money, though I share it. She doesn't need my approval, though she values it. That balance, that reciprocity is what makes partnership real. Sometimes I wonder about Melissa. I hear fragments, that she's still chasing bigger and better, that she's left a trail of broken engagements and fractured friendships. Perhaps she's still looking for the vault she can break open. Perhaps she always will. And I wonder about the boys. They're older now, on the cusp of adulthood. Maybe they understand, maybe they don't. Maybe one day they'll look back and realize that I wasn't cruel, that I was only refusing to be used. Or maybe they'll cling to the narrative that I was the villain who walked away. That's their choice. What I know is this: respect is not negotiable. Not in marriage, not in family, not anywhere. Love without respect is a hollow shell, a performance doomed to collapse. I nearly gave my life to a woman who saw me as a wallet. I nearly sacrificed my peace for children who rejected me. And yet, by walking away, I found the strength to demand more, and the clarity to recognize it when it finally arrived. Some would say I was lucky to escape. I don't call it luck. I call it survival. So here is my question to you. When someone shows you that they see you not as a person but as a resource, when they deny you respect but demand your responsibility, do you stay hoping they'll change? Or do you walk away, even if it means setting fire to the life you thought you had? Because I chose the fire, and it led me here,